Hey everyone, good news. The Oakland Raiders will sign a lease with the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum Joint Powers Authority and remain in Oakland for the foreseeable future, even though Oakland Raiders owner Mark Davis has issues with Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf. And the issue is that essentially Mark perceives Libby, actually he's rather myth with Libby for what he perceives as her going around him and befriending the NFL staff, which led to him, in part led to him not getting the deals that he wanted, and also forcing him to be in a situation that he doesn't perceive or didn't perceive at the time as advantageous to him. So Mark would have preferred that Libby try to work with him. Now, he, and I'm getting this from friends and other contacts and people I can't mention, but basically, Davis feels that Libby Schaaf doesn't understand stadium finance, and yet she comes with an arrogance that doesn't support her lack of knowledge. In other words, it's one thing to have knowledge and be arrogant, perceptually arrogant, okay? But it's another thing to not have the knowledge and be the same way. And that's what rankles Davis. For a long time, I thought this was an issue of gender. I thought maybe Mark had some problem with women who were smart and in power. But I was reminded, and I have to remember that the mayor herself, Mayor Jean Quan, when Jean Quan was mayor, talked to me about this on a couple of occasions, that she had a great relationship with Mark Davis. And they met regularly, had lunch, talked on the phone. There was never, ever a hint of discord between the two of them at all. So now, because of that, we have to look at the relationship between Mark and Libby from an entirely different focus. It's not a gender issue. It really is it's a byproduct of how Libby is approaching Mark. And she has to change that. What she's got to do, basically, is sit down one-on-one with Mark over lunch or dinner, have him over to the house, something where it's just the two of them, and talk less than he does and ask a lot of questions, have a pad with a pen, and take notes. The old-fashioned way, not the text way, but take notes and listen. And not be afraid to ask questions. And Libby can do this. Ask questions where she needs to know the answers so that she can help him and understand what he's thinking. That will go a long way toward repairing their relationship, because Mark doesn't feel that from her. That's the problem. In the NFL particularly, relationships are paramount. You have to have good relationships with people in order to get what it is you want. I mean, were it not for my relationship with NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell or Joe Brown or the others at the league, I wouldn't be able to have essentially built my media company around NFL coverage, and that's what I've done. But you can't do that just by saying, hey, I'm technically better than somebody else. You have to have relationships with people, and you have to make sure those relationships stick. That means Christmas cards, gifts, talking about stuff that's just life in general, proving essentially that you like the person you're working with as a friend. That's what Libby needs to do with respect to Mark Davis. And from all indications, she hasn't done that. She can't afford to think, well, I'm getting what I want politically. Also, when she sits down with Mark, she can't parrot the whole public subsidy issue. Everyone in the world understands that Libby does not want public subsidies used in the stadium. But a lot of people are getting tired of hearing it, and that song is getting old because it's getting older faster, because now we have many instances of stadiums being financed privately, even to the tune of almost $2 billion in Stan Kroenke's case in Los Angeles, not to mention the Carson Stadium that is not going to be built. In other words, private placement financings are all the rage now, and so there's no need to cry about government either providing subsidies or providing what investment banking types call a backstop against bond defaults. Another way private placement financings can be done. what happened was that, as far as Libby and Mark, when Libby said, hey, look, we're not going to give you the land, we're going to keep the land, and then turned around and said, we're considering using tax increment financing. Well, everyone who knows tax increment financing is completely aware that you can't do a tax increment financing approach without private ownership of the land. Governments, under the law, are not supposed to own the land, thereby effectively paying a property tax to themselves for tax increment financing. There are other laws that prohibit that as well, but I digress. But Libby introducing those two ideas showed that she didn't reconcile them, her staff didn't, and it was embarrassing. And it cemented the idea in the Raiders' mind that, hey, Libby and her staff may be politically great, but when it comes to stadium and public finance, they're wanting. So she's got to clean that up very, very quickly. The other issue is that, and something that's really important to recognize here, is that Libby has to make absolutely certain that she has a task force of people around her, because with a task force of people able to apply the right focus, mistakes like the ones that have been made in the past won't happen, or less likely to happen. The task force that consists of Oaklanders with institutional knowledge, experts, the JPA, of course, people that the Oakland City Council members want to be on it as well. That would be great. Something to help form a plan, not just for the Raiders, but for the A's, and move this whole thing along. But also to iron out the kinks and the technical issues that have popped up here and there over the previous months. We can solve that in a much shorter time frame with a good task force. The other problem is that Mayor Schaaf does not have anyone in her office that is singularly designated to this issue. Even her point person, Claudia Capio, is the assistant city administrator spread to other projects. This is not her singular focus. And when Libby went to New York in November of last year, Claudia was reportedly in Indonesia. That can't happen anymore. There has to be a focus. So the bottom line is, what Libby doesn't want is to think, I've got the public on my side, they don't care about the Raiders and all of that. No. What she wants to prove is that she can establish a relationship with Mark Davis like the one Gene Kwan had, get a deal out of it that yields a stadium that is to everyone's liking, and not just a stadium, but a facility for sports and entertainment that leads Oakland into the future and proves to rating agencies and to finance officials around the world that Oakland has the will and the initiative to complete big projects. But Libby can't do that until she repairs the relationship between she and Mark Davis.